For our top story this hour, we look to Congress, where newly elected members are making a lot of noise. By now, you've probably heard of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the 29-year-old woman who was elected to lead New York's 14th congressional district earlier this month. To become the youngest Congresswoman in American history, Ocasio-Cortez first had to defeat the fourth most powerful Democrat in the House of Representatives, Joe Crowley. She did this by branding herself as the new generation of the Democratic Party, even joining the Democratic Socialists of America, or DSA, a party which saw an extreme rise in popularity after the 2016 presidential elections. In the year following that vote, around 24,000 people joined the DSA, with 70 to 80% of those new members under the age of 35. Ocasio-Cortez rode that growing wave of progressive politics following the Sanders campaign straight to the doors of Congress. And since her victory has been billed by multiple media outlets as the future of the Democratic Party and U.S. politics. Vanity Fair even profiled her as, quote, the new establishment, complete with a glamorous cover shoot. She also has been recognized by corporate television, as In Question producer Cale Holmes found while compiling this.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a 28-year-old former bartender, community organizer, Bernie Sanders supporter, working-class New Yorker, as she calls herself, and Democratic socialist.
We're still, as a party, trying to gain inroads with the Bernie people that, frankly, the DNC understandably really upset.
In this election, our main task was to educate and expand the electorate.
Do you ever consider taking socialist out of your label?
She has a couple of advantages that the rest of the establishment Democrats don't have in Washington. One, she doesn't give a damn what Republicans think about her.
My strength is that I am honest and I am authentic. And I think that even Republicans write letters to our campaign saying thank you.
So do you do door knocking yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I've knocked on a bunch of doors in the district. This socialist label is something that I think the media cares more about, because I don't knock on a person's door and is like, hey, let me tell you about socialism. Like that's
that wouldn't.
That's not how I campaign.
Notice how Ocasio-Cortez immediately backed away from that socialist label upon election, the very label she embraced during her campaign. It was also following her victory that one of the most mainstream corporate figures in the Democratic Party, none other than its leader, Tom Perez, offered praise for the young politician.
3 kids, 2 of whom are daughters. One just graduated college, one is in college, and they were both texting me about their excitement over Alexandria because she represents the future of our party.
Over time, though, Ocasio-Cortez, the supposed up-and-coming radical congresswoman, started to sound more like an average Democrat. She raised eyebrows in August when she described deceased Republican Senator John McCain as, quote, an unparalleled example of human decency. Quite the glowing endorsement of a man who spent his career advocating for military intervention from Yugoslavia to Iraq to Syria and beyond. More recently, Ocasio-Cortez spent day one of freshman orientation on the Hill, engaging in what some in the media described as a protest against House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi.
But one of the things that I admire so much about Leader Pelosi is that she comes from a space of activism and organizing. And so I think that she really appreciates civic engagement. This is an encouragement of her, and this is to show that we're here to back up bold action, and that that she will be supported in that.
Doesn't really sound like a protest, does it? That's because it wasn't. Pelosi immediately defended the activists, claiming to have been inspired by their presence. And within days, Ocasio-Cortez endorsed Pelosi's candidacy for Speaker of the House. In other words, the so-called future of the party is throwing her support behind the woman who's led the Democrats in the House since 2003. With Ocasio-Cortez in question, we turn now to Danny Haiphong, co-author of the upcoming book, American Exceptionalism and American Innocence, A People's History of Fake News from the Revolutionary War to the War on Terror. He also just wrote a piece titled Ocasio-Cortez, Nancy Pelosi and the Con of Diversity at the Black Agenda Report. Welcome to In Question, Danny. You say in your piece that Ocasio-Cortez and the protest against Pelosi was a public relations stunt. Why would someone who sold themselves as a socialist be willing to play this role?
I think Ocasio-Cortez is willing to play this role because this is what the Democratic Party is all about. And when she decided to run in the Democratic Party ticket, I think there were many who believed that her sentiments and her policy demands were genuine, but forgot that the Democratic Party is completely controlled by Wall Street and the war machine, and that Ocasio-Cortez herself would end up representing what I call the con of diversity, which Glenn Ford at Black Agenda Report roots back to the Bakke case of 1977, which basically allowed institutions, universities in particular, to really write the script as to what the politics of representation really mean. And for the working class and for poor people and black people in particular, what the politics of representation or diversity really means is that people like Ocasio-Cortez, young, Latina, now she characterizes herself as working class, these identities, quote unquote, are able to pose and masquerade as enough for people who vote for them, when in fact Ocasio-Cortez, and we have numerous examples before her, women like Nancy Pelosi, for example, who praise themselves as a representative of progressives when in fact what they really do in the end, whether it's now or whether it is during their campaign, they end up supporting Wall Street, supporting the war machine. Nancy Pelosi, who Ocasio-Cortez just endorsed, was the one who was the most vocal in pushing through a military budget that was bigger than Donald Trump's, and now she's calling for bipartisanship with Trump. So when we're talking about progressivism and this new wave of Democratic Party radicalism and faux progressivism, we really have to be talking about the con of diversity, because the politics of representation is all that the Democratic Party seeks to offer its constituencies.
Journalist Andrew Stewart highlighted aspects of Ocasio-Cortez's history, particularly the fact she served as an intern for late Democratic Senator Ted Kennedy, to make the argument that she may have always been politically ambitious. He writes at Washington Babylon, quote, "In the press, she's seen as someone who was radicalized by the Bernie Sanders campaign, but this is the resume of someone who wanted to run for public office as a teenager. I'd even have to wonder if she joined DSA because she saw a wellspring for free interns and staff for a campaign she has been planning since the W administration." Do you see reason to doubt her authenticity to that degree?
I do. I think that there's always reason to doubt, especially those who pose as socialists, who then run inside of the Democratic Party with the knowledge and understanding that the Democratic Party is owned by Wall Street, it's owned by the Pentagon and the U.S. intelligence apparatus, that we are now in an era when people like Robert Mueller, people like George W. Bush are lauded, John McCain, who Ocasio-Cortez lauded as a hero. We're in a period where the Democratic Party is in active collaboration with the ruling class of this country, regardless of whatever side it politically stands on, to forward and exacerbate the oppression and the exploitation of the majority of people. A new study just came out by Credit Suisse, which says that 1 in 7 of the poorest 10% of the world is someone who lives in the United States. And people like Ocasio-Cortez, they advocate for Medicare for all when it's easy during the campaign. But then when they're in office, they end up abandoning these demands to support people like Nancy Pelosi, who has opposed Medicare for all since the beginning, since it became something that 90% almost of Democratic Party voters want. So what we see is that on that basis, we have to look at where these so-called new progressives actually come from.
I want to jump in on that very question because we don't have a lot of time left. So in the about 40 seconds we have, tell us, many of her supporters were also disappointed to hear Ocasio-Cortez walk back her characterization of Israel as occupying Palestine, later saying she was not an expert on geopolitics after winning her primary. What do you say to young people who got excited about someone young and radical only to see her essentially sell out? Where should they put their political energy?
I think they should put their political energy into organizing an independent political alternative to the Democratic Party. Right now, that doesn't exist. There's the Green Party that continues to be suppressed within the electoral arena. But I think young people really have to, especially young leftists, really have to do some soul searching and begin to understand that the war machine is really where we have to go after, because the Democratic Party is going to jump through hoops in order to continue to fund the war machine and expand it at the expense of all the demands that young leftists really want, like Medicare for all.
We'll leave it there for now. Danny Haiphong, really a pleasure to talk to you today.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.